Well, you are nervous right now because this means something to you. 49ers, Seahawks, week 18 for all of the regular season marbles and perhaps a lot of the postseason marbles, because postseason positioning for the winner is going to be very, very advantageous. Postseason positioning for the loser of tonight's game is going to be very, very challenging. Number one seeds have made the Super Bowl about 50% of the time. Number 5 to 7 seeds, and the loser of this game is either gonna be the 5 or the 6. If the Seahawks lose, they'll be the 5. The 49ers will depend on what the Rams do tomorrow against the Cardinals, but seeds down 5 and 6, those teams make the Super Bowl only about 15 to 20% of the time. So, there's a big, big difference here, especially since the 49ers host the Super Bowl this year at Levi's Stadium. That is big for San Francisco. So, you are nervous. You have a right to be nervous. You probably should be nervous. If you weren't nervous, then something would be a little bit off, because you should have that adrenaline right now in recognition of the stakes. And the stakes are very, very high tonight. Trent Williams' status still up in the air for the 49ers, and that is because he's got a hamstring injury. He might test this out before the game. I think in all likelihood, we don't see Trent Williams play because it is a soft tissue injury on a short week, and it's going to be Austin Pleasance for the 49ers. John Lynch spoke about Austin Pleasance on his NBC interview, and I thought that he provided some good insight. We're going to go through some of the intel of this game. We're going to set the table for this game through all of our efficiency metrics. I can say that I've been texting with Greg Papa this morning. He still plans to call the game tonight, so that's very good news for everybody involved. It's going to be awesome to have him back on the call. He's been fighting through leukemia, couldn't quite make it back last week, but Greg is excited to be back at the stadium today. And I can also tell you that there is some rain right now in the Bay Area. There's been rain over the course of the past several days, and it's likely going to continue into this evening. It's probably going to be intermittent throughout the day, maybe even throughout the game, but be ready for a wet football game tonight. Along those lines, let's talk about Trent Williams. Let's talk about Austin Pleasance, the journeyman who had been on 5 practice squads, who might be starting for the 49ers at the left tackle position tonight.
Give Fred Gamage and our pro staff a lot of credit. We were at a point in the season where we were pretty banged up at the tackle position. I believe in the Detroit game, he and Charlie Heck lined up, and they had just been here a couple weeks. But I think what we always do is flag guys at the end of rosters who show promise, who show that they could be a fit. Austin is obviously a huge, huge person. He's 6'6", 330 pounds, but he's got the athleticism that we covet. You have to be able to move to play offensive line for us. Then I give Chris Furster and his group a ton of credit for continuing to develop him. He played really soon after arriving, and he held his own. And then we go into the offseason, and the offseason is where a guy like that can really hone his skills. Chris CFO, as we call him, does a tremendous job at drilling these guys over and over. And Austin's a big man. Those guys really have to work on their movement. Austin's improved at that. I think a big thing for him is every Wednesday, since he's been our swing tackle, Trent takes Wednesdays off. We give him off Wednesdays to get his body back. And he's taken advantage of those opportunities. And I think that gives him some comfort. He's worked with the starters before. An interesting thing, we started the year, Spencer Burford was our swing tackle. Due to some injuries and opportunity, we just felt like, let's give Spencer an opportunity at that left guard. For much of the year, he and Barch rotated there. Barch went down, Burford's man in the left guard, so Austin becomes our swing tackle. And man, did he come up big at a really huge moment. After the first play of the game against the Bears, Trent went to chase down that interception, and Austin's thrust into it, and I think he did more than hold his own.
So it's interesting because Spencer Burford, who John Lynch talked about being the 49ers swing tackle to begin the year, he is now San Francisco's starting left guard, and he's playing well. He was 30 yards out in front of the line of scrimmage, blocking for Christian McCaffrey downfield on the longest rush of the year for the 49ers, 41 yards against the Bears. That is significant because the San Francisco had struggled to run the football this year to their standard for most of the campaign, including that week 1 win against the Seattle Seahawks. Including that week 1 win against the Seattle Seahawks back in September. I actually X'd myself out of the stream, but we're back. It's all good. A little pregame jitters right now. 49ers, maybe early season run game issues. Maybe that's the way that this stream is going. It's representative of the fact that the 49ers only ran for 3.1 yards per carry against Seattle in week 1. And the Seahawks have a very, very good defense. John Lynch, I thought, set the table really well on the NBC show, talking about how the 49ers are going to have to earn every single yard against the Seahawks. Here's the thing about that week 1 game. The 49ers had 4 drives of 10 or more plays. 4. That's a lot. And they only scored 17 points. They would have been over 20 had they made their field goals, and they obviously cut Jake Moody after that football game. But the fact that they had to go 10 or more plays to get into scoring position, and that didn't even include the final drive. They had to move a little bit more quickly on the drive that saw the Pearsall deep catch and the Tonjes touchdown. But the fact they had to run so many plays was a testament to how sound defensively these Seattle Seahawks are. They stopped the run. They could do it out of a 2-shell. They stop explosive passes. They've given up only 1 touchdown pass of more than 10 air yards over the course of the past several weeks. This is a top-tier defense that's going to require excellent patience from the 49ers. Purdy is going to have to take some risks, obviously, to move the football. As Kyle Shanahan says, you don't score points if you don't try to work into tight windows. But the risk-reward calculator today is going to have to be on complete point for Brock Purdy. Today, the 49ers are going to have to be careful with the football while simultaneously picking their spots, and they're going to have to be precise in their execution. Long drives like the ones that I talked about in week 1 are very likely going to be necessary for San Francisco. It's something that John Lynch touched on during his interview with NBC. Let's have a listen to John Lynch talking about this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks defense.
They defend you. Every yard is important, and it's important to them. I think when you look at really high-end defenses, and I'd call them that, they're a really high-end defense. They defend the run extremely well, and then they do a really good job in their 2-shell, 2 safeties back of making it really tough to get explosives down the field. But oftentimes, teams that do that, there's a lot of space underneath. They manage to kind of do both, where they keep both safeties back, but really tight coverage underneath. So everything, you have to earn it. You really have to be on your P's and Q's. Every yard is going to matter in this game. And, it's what we did up there in week 1. There's a 17-13 win, capped by that Tonjes catch at the end. But every yard in that game was important, and it will be out here on Saturday night.
And that's exactly what you want. The stakes for a game like this, you want every single yard to matter, because on the other end, every blade of grass has mattered to the 49ers defense. They haven't been good this year. Nobody's saying that they've been good. They're number 24 in EPA. They obviously lost Nick Bosa and Fred Warner since that week 1 game against Seattle. Michael Williams also no longer around for the 49ers. So the overall performance has suffered, but the 49ers have been a lot better in the red zone, and they've been a lot better than that number 24 rank on 3rd down. Number 15 in both of those categories. Another defensive stat that I want you guys to pay attention to today as the game happens, because it was so important against the Chicago Bears last week, is 2-minute defense. I know 2 minutes at the end of the game. Obviously, that's really important. But a lot of people underrate the importance of what happens at the end of the first half, especially if you're on defense while the opposition is going to get the ball first in the 3rd quarter. That can analytically screw up your entire path to victory. If a team can lap you, if a team can score at the end of the half and then also score to begin the third quarter. So first, we've got to pay attention to see who wins the coin toss in this game and who chooses to receive and all that. We'll see who gets the ball first to begin the game. We'll see who gets the ball first to begin the third quarter. So keep that in mind as the second quarter starts to wind down, and start to pay attention to the possession battle, start to pay attention to the clock management battle. Last week, it quite literally determined the game. The Bears wanted to score before halftime, and then they wanted to get the ball in the third quarter and score again. They did score coming out of halftime. They tied the game. But the 49ers delivered one of their 5 stops right before halftime. And I think it ended up preserving that victory. Robert Saleh called some of his best plays. He called a blitz, and Keon White was able to get through to pressure Caleb Williams to the right, and he threw the ball away on third down. 49ers forced a punt. Credit the Bears for delivering a very good punt. Put the 49ers back at their 10-yard line with just over a minute left in the half. But that's when the clock drain needed to happen for the 49ers, and they did a very, very effective job of it as an offense. Brock Purdy picked up a couple first downs, including a short one to Jake Tonjes on third down. The Bears had to use their timeouts, and then the 49ers were able to just run out the clock at the end of the first half. It was critical that they did not allow Chicago to lap them in that game. That kept the 49ers in that analytical driver's seat heading into halftime. Stuff like this is so important for the 49ers defense at this time because they are not an overpowering unit. Nobody's mistaking them for an overpowering unit. We look at the matchup of this game today. The 49ers, this is since week 11. The 49ers have been, I think, a little overrated on this chart defensively because they haven't played great offenses. Even without playing great offenses, until they've played a very high-powered Bears attack, but even without playing great offenses, the 49ers have been slightly below average defensively. That's on the y-axis of this chart. If you go to the x-axis of this chart, the 49ers have been almost off the chart. They've been as good as the New England Patriots at the very top of the league. So this is an offense-driven team, but the defense has to keep this afloat to the tune of at least clutch stops. And they got those against the Bears. They gave up a lot of yards. They gave up too many explosive plays, by the way, against the Bears, but they did get some clutch stops. 2 to begin the game, 1 at the end of the half that I just talked about, a field goal stop in the fourth quarter, and then the famous stop at the goal line. Chef's kiss. That was enough for the 49ers to get the job done. I don't think that the Seahawks are as good offensively as the Chicago Bears. In fact, if you go back and look here, Seattle is below average offensively since week 11. So theoretically, especially if the 49ers get the benefit of the rain, and you know, that could also go both ways. You got to be careful there. Sometimes rain can help a run game. Sometimes it can be a little slippery for tacklers and their angles, but it could also make it harder to throw the football because the ball is going to be wet. But either way, the 49ers need to hold an advantage on the high leverage downs against Seattle. I think it should be easier than it was last week, but it's anything but a given. This, I believe, if the conditions are decent enough, will be a race to the high 20s. Massive turnovers or special teams touchdowns could change that, but I think in a relatively clean game, this will be a race to the high 20s, and that's why I'm saying 27-24 wins this game. It could be for the 49ers, 27-24. It could be for the Seahawks, 27-24. Whoever gets to the high 20s first, I think will win this game if it's a relatively clean game. Now, you could probably throw a lot out the window. The second stuff becomes crazy, and often in these big games, it does become crazy. Sam Darnold has a propensity to throw some very costly picks in some of these big games. It's happened time and time again, including in his victory and the Seahawks victory over the Rams. It was 30-14. Darnold had thrown 2 really bad interceptions in that game, and the Seahawks got second life when Rashid Shaheed returned the punt for a touchdown. And then Sam Darnold was really good from that point on, but it was not money in the bank early in that game, and it took the special teams unit for the Seattle Seahawks to get back in it. And that brings me to the special teams part of this football game. It's the special teams bowl. These are the 2 best units in all football. I was talking a little bit to Sky Moore in the 49ers locker room this week, and it's interesting because you can think that both of these special teams units are just going to play this even, hold serve in this game because they're both good and they're both fundamentally sound. But sometimes Sky made the point that games like this, where it is two really good special teams units, that's where there's so much tension and so much preparation in the battle between those two crews that's when the return pops. That's when something crazy happens. I know 49ers fans probably will become even more nervous when I say this, but I'm objective and I cover the full breadth of history. In 2011, the 49ers had the best special teams unit in football, and they were playing a rain game at Candlestick Park. And it was one of those games where if you blinked once, you were going to lose. And the 49ers blinked, and they blinked a couple times, and they did on special teams. And that was the game where Kyle Williams muffed those punts. And the great irony of that game was that 49ers special teams had driven them in many ways to that point. They didn't have a great offense that year. They had a great defense, and they had great special teams. This year, it's great offense, great special teams, and the defense is coming along for the ride, just trying to do enough for the 49ers. But in the biggest situation, when in that NFC Championship game against the Giants, when everything was magnified and you just kind of figured special teams would be there for the 49ers, it failed them. It could fail the Seahawks today, who are the number one special teams unit in football. It could fail the 49ers today, who are the number two special teams unit in football. The point is, you've got to go out there and you have to play the game. You have to deliver, and whoever does deliver and execute better is probably going to win and probably going to hold that one seed heading into January football. And technically, this is January football. It is January 3rd, and the 49ers and the Seahawks are playing a game that means just about as much as the playoffs, maybe even more, because if you win today, you get an automatic playoff win next week without the cost of injuries next week. You also earn yourself home games in the divisional round and in the NFC Championship round. You also, if you're the 49ers and you win today, you push the Rams into the number 6 seed. And the Rams, I think, are the best team in the NFC as far as an offense-defense combination goes. I don't trust the Rams' special teams. I don't think the Rams trust their own special teams. I think they're very beatable because of that. But still, when you look at that LA team, you do not want them, absolutely do not want them to have a favorable path through the postseason. And if the Rams are at number 5, they get to play either Carolina or Tampa Bay in the first round, and those are games the Rams will probably win. If they're at number 6, the Rams will have to go to a cold weather destination in the first round of the playoffs. They'll have to go to probably Philadelphia, maybe Chicago. Both will be adverse conditions. The Rams are not good in adverse conditions. They want everything set up for their offense and their defense to flow the way it normally does. They want to be under the roof at SoFi. Obviously, that's going to be hard for them. It's not going to happen in the first round, but they would much rather be in Carolina or in Tampa. If you can get your most dangerous NFC playoff competition in a very fragile position, that is a win. So for the 49ers, if they win today, they get the 1 and they send LA to the 6, because Seattle would automatically be at the 5, and Seattle would be able to play the Panthers or the Bucks. But I don't think that Seattle is quite as dangerous as the Rams, because the offense is not nearly as good for the Seattle Seahawks. If you had to pick, right? If you had to pick a team to 2 out of 3 phases to be good, because nobody has 3 out of 3 phases in the league this year. Nobody's a perfect offense, defense, special teams. The Rams have a good offense and defense, really bad special teams. The Seahawks have a good defense and special teams, but the offense is ranked number 23 ever since midseason, since about week 10, a little bit after midseason. The 49ers have a really good offense and special teams, but the defense is ranked number 24 this year. So nobody's perfect. Everybody's flawed. If you had to pick 2 out of 3 phases to be good, I think you would pick what the Rams have. You'd pick offense and defense, and you would hope that the special teams doesn't screw it up. I know that those are famous last words. Often when teams say that, 2023 49ers, I'm looking at you. Often when teams say that, the special teams does screw it up, but still offense and defense typically should have a bigger impact on the game. So get the Rams down into that 6. That'd be good for everybody involved in the NFC. And I think that that's how the 49ers have to think about this. And obviously, you're just thinking about winning this game. But if you want to think about this and its impact in the larger scale, Rams moving down to have to play Philadelphia or Chicago would be a significant deal in the larger picture. My buddy Byron and my buddy Mark, I'm not sure if Mark is with him, but Byron is down in Cabo. He's flying a jet back up to the Bay Area. He'll be back in time for today. And so he's at the fueling station. This is the jet fuel station. And he has made sure to fill the jet up with exactly 4,900 pounds of fuel. 4,900. You could see there because, well, you've got to fill it up with 4,900 pounds of fuel if you're headed to the 49ers Seahawks game to close out this regular season with the number 1 seed on the line. So that was cool to see that text this morning. This is cool to see. This is point differential ever since week 11, since Brock Purdy returned and has been playing MVP caliber football. The 3 best teams in the league by point differential are the Jags at plus 119, the Seattle Seahawks at plus 78, and the San Francisco 49ers at plus 69. I have yet to cover a regular season matchup that is as analytically even as this 49ers Seahawks matchup. And it's fascinating to me because it's analytically even while the teams are very differently constructed as far as what they're excelling at and what they're struggling at. They're inverses, right? The Seahawks have been number 23 offensively. The 49ers have been number 24 defensively. So those two units get to face each other. The two struggling units get to face each other. The Seahawks have been a little bit better running the ball than passing the ball. The 49ers have actually been a bit better stopping the run than stopping the pass. So again, those two units, that's going to be a great clash on that side of the ball. It might not be as high of a quality clash as the other side where the 49ers offense has ranked number 1 ever since week 11. And the Seahawks defense is a top 2 unit this year. That's going to be the marquee matchup. But I think that there is evenness in both of these matchups. And then in all 3 of these matchups, if you consider that these are the 2 top special teams units in football, I think there's beautiful evenness, beautiful symmetry across the board. And I mean, the fact that the NFL was able to get this as the week 18 game, the fact that it is for all the marbles, it is for the difference between the 1 and the 6 seed for the 49ers, the 1 and the 5 seed for the Seattle Seahawks. Well, again, chef's kiss. That is exactly what you want to see as an NFL fan. I think the only disappointment is that this game is not on Sunday night. They have to put the potential final career game of Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens on Sunday night instead. But it's all good because both the 49ers and the Seahawks have to deal with the short rest, and maybe that means they get a little bit of a longer time to prepare for next week, or the 49ers would benefit theoretically if they won and they played on Saturday of the divisional round. The NFC Championship game wouldn't be until Sunday. The 1 seed almost always actually gets the Saturday game of the divisional round, which means an extra day of rest for the NFC Championship because their opponent would come from the Sunday game of the divisional round. So it's an 8-day week instead of a 7-day week for the NFC divisional round winner. So it really is to the victor go all the spoils kind of situation tonight, where that Super Bowl path is wide open for whichever team wins this game, and especially open for the 49ers since the Rams get pushed into the 6 and since the Super Bowl itself is at Levi's Stadium. This week, the 49ers, Fred Warner was off to the side at the working out on the practice field. And, you know, when I talk about stakes for San Francisco moving forward, I cannot omit the fact that Fred Warner is nearing his return. So think, if you can get a win tonight and you earn all the benefits that I just talked about, and you head into that divisional round with rest, you don't play until January 17th in the divisional round. That's 2 weeks from today. you might also be getting Fred Warner back. Maybe not for the divisional round, but the NFC Championship game would be a real possibility. And I even wouldn't rule out the divisional round. But Fred Warner would be able to charge out of the tunnel at Levi's Stadium for a home playoff game if the 49ers win today. I mean, that would open the possibility of an insane Fred Warner return, which would probably bring Levi's to decibel levels that we have never heard before. John Lynch talked a little bit about that on the NBC interview. So why don't we hear about Fred Warner and that potential return?
Dream, right? And I think during those times where you're away from the building, during the times, I remember Saturday's walkthrough and Fred was over there working out to the side and I saw a lot of heads turning. He's such an inspiration for this team, not only because he's a tremendous player, but because of his work ethic. I mean, Fred is one of those guys. People ask me all the time, you guys are all professionals. Do certain guys really outwork the competition? Absolutely. And Fred's one of those. And it's that situation that people talk a lot about. When your best players are your hardest workers, that bodes really well for your team, because there's a perfect blueprint for how you max out your talent when you look at guys like Fred. And it's no different when it comes to an injury. The way he attacks the rehab is just, it's second to none. And that gives him a chance to be a viable option at some point. Now, do guys play extra hard for that? I'm sure they'd love to get Fred there, but we're just focused on the Seattle Seahawks right now and in this game.
Focused on Seattle in this game, but what waits around the corner is very, very tantalizing. So, I mean, I think that the 49ers defense needs one more piece. I mean, that's been obvious. They've lost so many pieces. So you talk about what you need, one more like A-list legitimate piece, not something that it was available at the trade deadline. I think the only player that theoretically was available at the trade deadline that probably would have given the 49ers enough of a boost without Warner and without Bosa in there might have been Trey Hendrickson. But he ended up being hurt, needing surgery, so he couldn't have given the 49ers that boost. I'm just saying a healthy Trey Hendrickson, plus he would have cost the first-round pick. It was a ridiculous price by the Cincinnati Bengals, who are likely going to lose him anyway. So the deadline wasn't going to do it for the 49ers. What they have needed has been this return of Fred Warner to bring that defense, I don't know, 3 or 4 more stoppage plays away per game. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not talking about changing defensive efficiency in a massive way. I'm talking about opportunism. I'm talking about a pass breakup. I'm talking about a correct shift in the right direction. I mean, Fred Warner is the general. He's the captain. I think that the 49ers do not need 100% of Fred Warner to see the type of improvement that they need on defense. The offense is elite. The special teams is elite. The defense just needs to be, instead of the number 24 unit, the number 19 unit. Instead of the number 15 unit in the red zone, move it up to number 12. Instead of the number 15 unit on third down, move it up to number 13. You know, marginal improvement like that, which I don't think would have been, attainable just by picking up a random piece right before the deadline. They did what they could a week ahead of time. They needed some reinforcements on the defensive line, obviously. So they got Keon White and they signed Cleveland Farrell, and both of those things have helped the 49ers stabilize a little bit. But as far as the next level of needle moving that can be enough to push this team to a Super Bowl, I think that Fred Warner and his return could be that for the 49ers. But they're not getting it today. They may not even get it in the divisional round. They may, and who cares about the divisional round? Let's not even talk about the wild card round. That's something that we can revisit in case the 49ers lose tonight. But right now, they're playing so they don't have to worry about that wild card round, and so they can make the divisional round as easy as possible and create a potential landing spot there for Fred Warner's return. Can they build a bridge, cross the gap between now and Warner's return? So far, it's been so good, but incrementally, it's gotten harder and harder every single week. I mean, you could go back to The Cleveland Browns game, that was a massive challenge for the 49ers offense, but the Cleveland Browns own offense wasn't very good. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans coming out of the bye week, that's a game that we expected the 49ers to win and win by a lot, and they did. Then they had to go on the road and play a good Indianapolis Colts team that unfortunately had lost their quarterback, so they had to go to the 44-year-old Phillip Rivers, and the 49ers took care of business, but it was a little bit harder than weeks before, and then the 49ers just blew the doors open in the fourth quarter of that football game. Last week, it got truly difficult. They faced one of the better teams in football. They faced a true playoff team in the Chicago Bears, and that game went all the way down to the wire. The Bears were very different stylistically than the Seahawks. The Bears gave up a lot of yards on defense. The Seahawks are going to be stingy in that regard. The Bears had a very explosive offense. I'm not sure that Seattle is going to be able to reprise that on their end. But the special teams for the Seahawks are better than Chicago's. I mean, last week was a Big 12 game. I don't think that this is a Big 12 game. And I think the 49ers will win tonight for sure if it turns into a Big 12 high scoring in the 30s or in the 40s kind of game. I think that San Francisco is better equipped to handle that type of game. Seattle will try to drag this down as low as possible. In week 1, they successfully did that, but the 49ers had Fred Warner and they had Nick Bosa, so they were able to win a game 17-13. I'm not so sure that the 49ers hold the Seahawks to 13 points in this game. I think Seattle is probably going to hit 20, probably going to be a little bit over 20. And because of that, we're talking about the 49ers having to hit the high 20s in this game. As you know, I wrote it up on the San Francisco Standard. 27-24 is my prediction. This is the prediction, by the way. That's Fred Warner. We got to get this up for you. This is on the Standard. And that is Jake Tonjes making the catch in front of Reek Woolen, who's in very awkward position there. Tonjes was able to position himself in front of Woolen, even though he was behind him when Purdy made the throw. So that ended up in legendary fashion, and it was a low-scoring game. I think today will be a mid-scoring game just because the 49ers defense is nowhere near where it was. And I will say that the offense for San Francisco is ahead of where it was. I mean, here's a huge stat for today. The 49ers are obviously an offense that runs through the tight end position. They have been all season. It's been through Kittle, through Christian McCaffrey. The Seahawks rank number 18 in efficiency defending tight ends this year. What that tells you is that tight ends, good ones, that's the one position that could really compromise the balance of Seattle's defense. When Leonard Williams is wrecking games up front at the defensive line, when Ernest Jones IV, he's a great two-way linebacker. Julian Love is a really, really good safety. Witherspoon is a good corner. I mean, they've got talent on all levels here, and Mike McDonald is one of the best scheme defenses in the game. When you're able to stop the run and the pass, and you're able to stop the run out of pass defense formations and vice versa, when you're able to do that, standard offensive rules are going to have a really, really tough time breaking the opposing defense. It's going to be hard to find explosives. It's going to be hard to put the defense into compromising positions. Well, George Kittle is somebody, he's the ultimate weapon in that you don't, and just like Christian McCaffrey, it's cut from the same cloth. You don't know if the 49ers are going to run power or run some kind of outside zone, inside zone, or if he's going to be deployed on a deep pattern, and because he has 4.5 speed and he can come out of his formation where he could deliver big-time blocking prowess and deliver an explosive gain through the air downfield instead. When the defense cannot be sure what the offense is running based on personnel group, that is when Kyle Shanahan can start having some fun. That's a big part of the reason why Seattle has relatively struggled against tight ends this year, because I think tight end play around the league has elevated. Kittle's the best of the bunch. And it's no coincidence that the 49ers came into Seattle in week 1 and opened things up with a 14-play, 85-yard drive with 95 net yards. Here's the drive log from week 1. There you go. 14 plays, 85 yards. George Kittle was a major, major factor for the 49ers on that drive. Then he got hurt, and the 49ers immediately punted, missed a field goal, didn't do anything at the end of halftime, interception, blocked field goal, kicked the field goal in the fourth quarter, interception, finally, touchdown drive. No George Kittle after the first drive. Now, they had some marches over 10 yards. I thought that was impressive. They gained over 400 yards against Seattle's defense. They earned everything that was in there. But the one time that the 49ers went like a hot knife through butter against the Seahawks was that first drive. The first third down was an out pattern to George Kittle. The Seahawks couldn't cover it. The touchdown was a third down throw from Brock Purdy to George Kittle. The Seahawks had trouble covering it. George is going to be back tonight, and I think it's the biggest possible return for the 49ers, especially given where Seattle has relatively struggled defensively. So keep that in mind watching today's game, even if Trent Williams is unable to go. Some of you might have seen this earlier. This was at my desk. I found it because we had to clean out our desks in preparation for the Super Bowl at Levi's Stadium. Post-game quotes from 2019, the last time these two teams played in a winner take the one seed situation. December 29th, just a little over 6 years ago. We just hit the anniversary. Dre Greenlaw stopped. Did you know that the 49ers actually have a play named Greenlaw in their defensive playbook for goal line situations? Maybe they have to bust it out today to preserve the victory against Sam Darnold, Eric Saubert and company, the former 49ers tight end who was with him last year. He scored the game-winning two-point conversion against the Rams a few weeks ago. That was ex-49er to ex-49er. Darnold to Eric Saubert. In many ways, this is cool because this is a full circle moment for the 49ers quarterback room tonight. And I think I want everybody to really appreciate that. I'm going to get a cool picture up on the screen because I got to find that cool picture. Here it is. We got it. This is an iconic shot. The 49ers took a lot of unwarranted heat over the years. Like, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch don't know how to manage a quarterback room. When in reality, they were operating the league's most prolific, productive factory at the quarterback position. Now, these two guys, Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy, will fight for the number one seed. One turned his career around with the 49ers in 2023 as Purdy's backup, and he still credits Brock Purdy for a lot of how he was able to right the ship. The other, Brock Purdy, has been the NFL's most efficient quarterback since he entered the league in 2022. We have a good super chat, and I really, really like this one right here. This is good. Sky Moore had a punt touchdown against Seattle in the preseason. Yes, he was a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. A few days later, the Chiefs traded him to the 49ers, and I talked to Sky about the Seattle punt return that he had for a touchdown. And he said, I think that might be the reason that I'm here. That might be the reason that I'm with the 49ers, because they saw that punt return and they said, you know what? We need a return, man. The rookie Junior Bergen definitely needs some more seasoning. We need to get Sky Moore from the Chiefs. Looks like he has some juice. It looks like he has the capability to do this. And so the 49ers went out and made the trade, and the rest was history. And now maybe he breaks one against the Seattle Seahawks again tonight. We got Natasha nervous tonight because the ref is Bill Vinovich, who's been the official in the Super Bowls for the 49ers. But this crew there are numbers on each officiating crew, whether they're calling the game tightly or loosely. I honestly think that it's not healthy to zero too much on that before the game. That's definitely something that the 49ers can't control. That's something the Seahawks can't control. But yes, the Bill Vinovich crew is officiating this football game tonight. Anyway, back to this. The former 49er Darnold against the current 49er Purdy. Purdy has not been in the league as long as Darnold. He's a younger QB, but he did help turn Darnold's career around. Sam was coming off of stints in New York with the Jets and with the Carolina Panthers when he joined the 49ers in 2023, was their backup, picked up so much in that quarterback room, and then went to the Minnesota Vikings in 2024, finished the season poorly with Minnesota last year. So Darnold had an opportunity in Week 18 in a 1-seed game, a game for the 1 seed against the Detroit Lions. He had a real chance to impress, and he melted down. So that was the same situation as this one. It was on the road against the Detroit Lions defense that wasn't all too good. And they were missing Aiden Hutchinson. So there's some parallels there. And then the very next week, because the Vikings had to go to the wild card and they had to play on the road against the Rams, Darnold melted down again 2 times in a row. It cost him a lot of money in the offseason when the Seattle Seahawks were able to sign him for about $30 million per year. I think Darnold would have been a guy in the high 40s, the mid to high 40s on the free agent market had he finished a solid year with Minnesota without the choke job at the very end of it. He turned around and he played really good football for the Seattle Seahawks over the course of most of this 2025 season. But again, ever since week 11, it hasn't been good for the Seahawks. And here are the numbers to prove it. Offense is on the x-axis, and they've been a little bit worse than average ever since that week 11 portion of the season. Another team that's been a little bit worse than average offensively, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Houston Texans, the Chargers. Those are all playoff teams that have not fielded great offenses down the stretch here of 2025. They have been very, very good defensively, though. So it's just a different style of success than the 49ers, who have not been great defensively, not been good defensively, but have been excellent offensively ever since Brock Purdy returned. So while Darnold has struggled, Purdy has been sensational to the point where we have a lot of good numbers on Brock Purdy. And I know that we've gone through many of them over the course of this week. We can continue going through the good Brock Purdy numbers if you'd like right now. I also have a very, very interesting pressure and blitz rate statistic and graph that I'll put up for the 49ers defense. But I think that this quarterback comparison graph right here shows you a lot of what you need to know entering this football game. This is since week 11. This is where Purdy's been. Follow the arrow to where Darnold's been. You got Darnold below average with a bunch of other bums like Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Mahomes just wasn't good down the stretch of this season. Matthew Stafford also hasn't been great down the stretch of this season. But you've got Darnold over here in the lower left, and you've got Purdy along with Drake May in the upper right. These have been the most efficient quarterbacks in football. May should be the front runner for the MVP award. But I'll tell you one thing. If Christian McCaffrey has a massive game tonight, or even if Brock Purdy has a massive game tonight, both of those guys should get MVP votes. Like, if Purdy lights up the Seahawks tonight, leads the 49ers to victory despite the fact that their defense is struggling, and they're 7-0 since his return, and it's propelled them to the 1 seed. And if Brock Purdy is the guy that's statistically and, delivering at the center of the controls for the offense, I get that he's missed 8 games, but I think he should get MVP consideration. He won't win because the voters care too much about the counting stats. But when you just talk about valuable by the definition of the word, that would signify true value, right? One player to definitely look at, though, if he goes off tonight is Christian McCaffrey, because he's been available the whole season. So even when the 49ers were not an elite team, Christian McCaffrey helped keep them afloat. And McCaffrey is obviously a big reason now why this offense is elite for the 49ers. He is 110 receiving yards short entering this game of 1,000. If he hits 1,000, McCaffrey will have become the first player in NFL history to go 1,000 twice. Now, 110 receiving yards is a lot to get in a single game for a running back. McCaffrey's season high is 92. His career high is 116. So technically it is possible It might be unlikely, but who knows? Maybe there is a lot of underneath action in the pass game today to Christian McCaffrey, and he does naturally get across that 1,000-yard mark. And, I can see a scenario, even if it isn't overly probable. I can see a scenario where the 49ers win this game in the rain with a lot of underneath work to Christian McCaffrey. He goes over 110 yards. He's 1,000 for the second time, first player in NFL history to do that. The 49ers are the 1 seed. McCaffrey will have delivered a full 17-game season at 1,000. And I would think that Christian McCaffrey needs to win the MVP. He might not win the MVP because the voters are obsessed with giving it to a quarterback and they're obsessed with quarterback counting stats. But in that scenario, could you argue that there's actually a more valuable player than Christian McCaffrey in this league based on how he was able to keep the 49ers afloat even when Brock Purdy was out with the turf toe injury? I think it'd be hard to argue that he's not the MVP. So individual accolades might be on the line tonight, at least in the context of those of us arguing about this objectively. I don't think the MVP award is given out objectively. I think it's given to the hottest quarterback in December. So if you have a bad December, it's tough to win it. And I think, Matthew Stafford has not had a good December, as we've illustrated. And it's also cost the Rams playoff positioning. It's cost them the 1 seed. It's cost them the NFC West. So I think that you can't give it to him. So everybody's looking at Drake May. Why not Christian McCaffrey, given what he's done this year? And let's allow Christian McCaffrey to make his closing statement tonight when the 49ers do play the Seattle Seahawks. We got some more super chats. If Fred Warner is able to come back this year, will he win the comeback player of the year? No, he won't. Comeback player of the year is a regular season award, so the voting will be wrapped up and taken care of before Fred Warner does come back. He should retroactively win comeback player of the year in 2026, though, if he's able to come back, and especially if the 49ers win the Super Bowl. If the 49ers make it to the Super Bowl, where will it be? It will be in Levi Stadium. They're not going to move the Super Bowl if the 49ers make it. They'll have a chance to host the Super Bowl, just like the Rams did to close the 2021 season. And the 49ers didn't host it in 84. It was at Stanford Stadium, but it was actually closer to their facility than their own stadium, Candlestick Park. They were at Redwood City training at the time. That was 711 Nevada Street for the 49ers, and 15 minutes down the road, down the road. It was south from Redwood City, down El Camino Real, the Kings Road. The 49ers played the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl. Was that Super Bowl 16? No, Super Bowl 16 was the 1982 calendar year Super Bowl. This was 19, I believe. This was a few Super Bowls after that. 1984 season, 49ers beat the Dolphins. 38-16 was the score. Joe Montana, Roger Craig. I mean, that was epic for San Francisco. Their second of 5 Super Bowl championships. Like, we got a great comment here. It's not in the super chats, but I just saw it. David, have you checked the 2011 Giants defense and how it compares? Yes. The Giants were 25th for the season, but they showed up and won the Super Bowl with Eli. I think that the Giants had a favorable schedule that season when they ran into Alex Smith in the NFC Championship game. Did they beat the Packers, though, in the divisional playoffs? I'm trying to remember the Giants beat before the 49ers, but the 49ers had the number 20 offense, so I think that definitely allowed, plus the rain, allowed the Giants to play a great game defensively. And they had some veterans still on that unit who were able to get it done. It was not a great defense. I believe they beat Green Bay in extreme cold the week before, but I might be wrong. I'm going to see the 2011 New York Giants season. We'd look at some of the results here. In the postseason, the Giants beat the Packers. They did. They crushed them. They put up 37 points. Yeah, okay, so that it probably was cold. First, they beat the Falcons 10-7. No. First, they beat the Falcons 24-2. So that defense turned it up in the playoffs for the Giants that year. They beat the Falcons 24-2. They beat the Green Bay Packers 37-20. They beat the 49ers in the Kyle Williams game 20-17, and they beat the Patriots 21-17. Notably, they beat the Patriots by more than they beat the 49ers. Interesting. I think I will argue to this day that if San Francisco had found a way to get to the Super Bowl, they would have beaten the Patriots that year. It was a monstrous 49ers defense, and it was a monstrous special teams, and I think it took a fluke of a game from the special teams unit with Kyle Williams fumbling away those punts. I think it took a fluke of a game for the Giants to beat them, and given the fact that New England was just as close to the Giants, just a point difference, I think the 49ers would have won that Super Bowl as well. But such has been life for the 49ers over the past 3 decades since they won to close the 1994 season. It has been torture for the 49ers. They've had a lot of good teams, but they haven't been quite able to pull it through to the finish line. They've shown so much resilience this year, though. And, I know I talk a lot about the San Francisco Giants and the comparison to the 2010 team, and this 49ers team has given us a lot of signs of that. Consider the fact that the San Francisco Giants of the early 2000s was an absolute super team with Barry Bonds, Jeff Kent, all those guys, Rob Nen, the closer. They didn't win it. They didn't win the World Series. They blew the World Series against the Angels in 2002 in Game 6 when they were up 5-0 in the late innings of that game. It was the Giants teams that weren't on paper the best in baseball that ended up winning the World Series in 2010, 2012, and 2014. I think there is something, and Giants, it just so happens the football Giants, the New York football Giants who we're talking about right now with Eli Manning, were not the best teams on paper, but they won the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots, the 2007 season, and then they won the Super Bowl against the Patriots in 2011. I think both times people would say that there were a lot other better teams in the league, but the Giants got it done. I think in 2010, 2012, and 2014, there were better teams in baseball, but the Giants, the San Francisco Giants, got it done. Might it be that the 49ers this year in 2025, definitely not the complete offense, defense outfit that they were in 2019, 2022, 2023. They've got a big glaring hole in the defensive side of the ball. But maybe they're grimy, maybe they're gritty, maybe they're resilient enough to get it done this season as opposed to those years. A big part of that test comes tonight. Because tonight, there's an argument, and I might subscribe to it, but I'll never say never with what this team has already done to get to this point this year. But there's an argument that the 49ers just are not good enough to head into the postseason as a low seed, win on the road in the wild card round, win on the road in the divisional round, win on the road in the championship game, and then come back home for the Super Bowl. There's an argument that the 49ers just can't go that path. Maybe in 2022, they had the firepower to go that path. Maybe in 2023, they had the firepower to go that path, although they didn't need to because they had home field advantage this year. 2021, they tried that path, and I don't think they had the firepower for it. They ran out of gas late against the Rams after the road games against the Cowboys and the Rams. So there's a school of thought, and it might be correct that the 49ers don't have the firepower to lose tonight and come back through the bracket as a road team. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe they do. Maybe they'll continue fighting, and maybe they'll lose tonight and continue fighting and resurrect from it because they've already resurrected from a lot this season. So I'll never say never there, but there's a school of thought that says that the 49ers, in order to have a shot to win it all this year, have to win tonight so that they have the bye, the home games, which would be, they wouldn't have to leave Levi Stadium for the rest of this year if they win tonight. The bye, the home games, the chance to get Fred Warner to come out of the tunnel at Levi Stadium, and the Rams relegated to the 6. That's an underrated part of this. If you can relegate the Rams to the 6, your path is so much more open. So tonight is all about the positioning and the strategy, behind that positioning. that the 49ers can get entering January, because it is a flawed team, but it's obviously a resilient team. And it's one that I think, if it's given, but given how it's built, right? If it's given a clear path to the postseason at home, elite offense could really benefit from that. Give this offense home games at Levi's from now on to the Lombardi Trophy. I think they can really benefit from that. The issue is that I think they need one more piece defensively. I think that could be Fred Warner, but you have to get to that piece. So tonight is about winning for Fred Warner if you're the 49ers, because you can get to that piece, and then I think your path can be truly clear if Fred Warner is indeed able to come back in the postseason. So if you are nervous right now, it's because it means something to you. And that's because it means something to the 49ers. And I know how important this team is to its fan base. This is one of those games that you're going to remember for a long time, win or loss. You remember 2019 Seattle on December 29th for a long time. I'm sure those of you who've watched the 49ers for a longer period of time remember Super Bowl 16. Remember the 49ers beating the Bengals 26-21, the Dan Buns goal line stop. I'm sure you remember Marino going down against the 49ers and Montana and Roger Craig in the 1984 season at Stanford Stadium, 38-16. I'm sure a whole heck of a lot of you remember John Taylor catching the winning pass from Joe Montana at Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami in the 1988 season. I'm sure a lot of you remember the following season at the Louisiana Superdome. 49ers won 55-10 over the Denver Broncos, the largest blowout in Super Bowl history. That season's 49ers outscored its opponents by 100 combined points. That's never going to happen again in NFL history. And I'm sure even more of you remember the 49ers over the San Diego Chargers, 49-26, Super Bowl 29, Joe Robbie Stadium again in Miami, Steve Young throwing 6 touchdown passes. I'm sure you remember all the triumphs. I'm sure you remember all the brutal losses, including some of the losses that came in between those Super Bowls, like the ones against the Cowboys in 92 and 93. Maybe the New York Giants loss in 1986, 49-3. Maybe the Minnesota Vikings playoff loss in 1987. The Washington Redskins playoff loss in the 1983 season where the 49ers got screwed by the officials. I'm sure you then remember the subsequent heartbreakers like the 2011 loss against the Giants, the 2012 Super Bowl loss against the Ravens, the 2013 loss against the Seattle Seahawks and Richard Sherman yelling at Aaron Andrews, the Chiefs Super Bowl losses. I'm sure you remember all of it. The wins, the losses. That's why this means so much to you. That's why you're nervous entering this game today, because you remember how good you felt after the massive wins, and you remember how terrible you felt after the catastrophic losses. This game inherently will not have the ability to produce the type of damage that some of the losses that I just listed did, because it will not, regardless of what happens tonight, it will not mark the end of the 49ers season. But the possible upside of this game is so tremendous that if the 49ers do win, oh my goodness, you will, I mean, this is one that you're going to remember for a long time. So my advice to you is to cherish today. The build-up is what's so exciting, I think, about some of these games. You just, just the anticipation, the build-up. If you're going out to the stadium, have fun at the tailgate. If you're flying from Cabo on your private jet, fuel it up with 4,900 pounds of jet fuel. I mean, do all that stuff. There's the 4,900 pounds of jet fuel that Byron is putting in the jet heading up. Do whatever you need to, superstition-wise. Enjoy, be ready for the wet weather. Enjoy the journey, because sometimes the journey is the destination. And I think in this point, you sit back and enjoy great football. Brock Purdy's playing at an MVP level. Sam Darnold once learned under Brock Purdy, and now it comes full circle. Clint Kubiak, the Seahawks offensive coordinator, is brothers of the 49ers offensive coordinator, Clay Kubiak. They've both worked with 49ers quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, right there in the past. I mean, the storylines are awesome, and I think the 49ers are going to get it done 27-24 tonight. But We are here to be entertained, and I'm just excited to be able to cover the game. All right, I'm going to go swim in the San Francisco Bay right now. No wetsuit. We're going to get ready for the game, and then it's the battle for the number 1 seed tonight at Levi's.